That's me.
The Geator with the heater.
The boss with the hot sauce.
The Geator. The Geator with the heater.
The man with the plan, with the plan.
The boss.
Oh, with the hot sauce.
He's the Geator. The Geator with the heater.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me say greetings and salutations. You know, I am the Geator. All right, are we on?
We're good.
Hello, guys. Hello, folks. Good to have you back again. I've got two of the finest technical guys in the country here. I call them Electronic Dave and Symphonic Ed. So for the next hour, you and I are going to have some fun from my studio here in Philadelphia. And I understand now that I could see your questions if you would like to ask me anything. Am I correct in saying that, Eddie?
Yep.
So your questions can come up right on this big screen, and I will say hello to you. Now, I have to say hello to a dear friend of mine, though, before I start. He is one of the greatest comedians in the country. I mean, Frankie Valli, if you're listening to me, I'm telling you, Stewie Stone said to me that he made you a star. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't Stewie who said it. It was Franny who said it. So I want to say hello to Franny and Stewie Stone. And I want to say hello to all of the gang in Florida, all over the world that are looking and listening to me right now. So I've got some questions, okay? Now, who? Oh, I'll get to that.
Okay.
I promise I'll get to that. But here's a question. Buzz Arnold. Now, I don't know where you're at, Buzz, but the question is, why did you choose radio as a career? In reality, I did not choose radio. Radio chose me. When I was a kid, just like you out there, radio was your friend. The disc jockey that you listened to was your friend. You made dedications and requests, and I listened to black radio, WHAT, WDAS, because they played the real music. When Fats Domino did Ain't It a Shame, and then Pat Boone covered it, you would hear Pat Boone's version on the popular stations of the day. But the real version that I listened to was Fats Domino. The same thing with Jim Dandy or Tweedledee. Georgia Gibbs had the pop version, and as you know, I loved Laverne Baker. She had the real hit. So I found all of this in radio. So I constantly listened to radio, and then when I left Bandstand and had Danny in the Juniors as the road manager, you remember the song At the Hop, I would visit radio stations when we would do tours to do promotions. And I would see the way the radio guys would operate with the headphones and all of that stuff. So I'd always loved radio. And what was happening was that when I got off the road with Danny and the Juniors, and it's in a book that I wrote, You Only Rock Once, I got into a crap game. A crap game of shooting dice with the guys in Philadelphia. We would shoot dice up the alley. Did other things up the alley. Ask Stewie Stone. But what happened, one of the guys said, I'm looking for somebody to do a radio show from my club at the Venus Lounge. So to make a long story short, I wind up going to the radio station, buying time to do a show from the Venus Lounge, which was a talk show. And all of the people that were on the road with me, Frankie Avalon, and Nat Funicello, whoever was on the road, we were friends, and if they would come into Philadelphia, they would do the talk show. A snowstorm closed the club down. I owned the time with sponsors that I went out and solicited. So what happened was that I couldn't do the show at the Venus Lounge. So I went up to WCM in Camden, New Jersey, and I took all my records, because I have stacks and stacks of records. And that's how it began. I never chose it. I just did it because radio chose me. And I developed a technique with rhythm in dancing and singing along with the records because I originally began as a dancer. So to your question, radio. I didn't choose radio. Radio chose me. All right. Now, we have a question here. Tell us about playing poker in Richard Facenda's grandmother's basement. Herman, how do you remember that? Playing poker. Well, my dad was a great poker player. And I learned from all of the Jewish racketeers how to play poker. So I would watch these guys. How about that question? Hope, this girl Hope, she says, what are some of your best memories from Wagner's? Wagner's Ballroom, for you people who are watching me, was where thousands of kids would go every Sunday from every neighborhood in Philadelphia. And we spoke about the fact that neighborhoods are very, very important because you would meet other kids other than from your neighborhood, and you would learn from them. You would see their style, the way they would dress. You would go out on dates with them. So the dances were very important in bringing kids together. I don't know if you could ever do that again today because of the fact to have 1,000 kids and no problem was amazing. If a kid stepped out of line, what you would do, you would bar him. And when the rest of his friends were coming in and he couldn't get in, he'd say, please give me another chance. And you give him another chance, and the kid there was accountability for the action. Today, I wonder about the fact there's no accountability sometimes, which is not a good thing. There's right, there's wrong. You do wrong. The kid was out of line. He was barred from the dance. He knew he couldn't get back in unless he straightened himself out. So that's the way the dances work.
Hold on. Take a roll call. Anybody who's been to Wagner's that's watching now.
Anybody who's watching me now,
Give a wave emoji.
wave to me. Is that
Emoji. A wave emoji.
a wave and who?
Emoji.
Emoji?
Emoji. Wave emoji.
A wave emoji.
If you've been to Wagner's,
If you've been to Wagner's, you just wave. If you've been to the Chevu Ballroom, you just wave so I can see what you look like. I can't see you, but you can see me. I don't know about that. Are they waving now?
not yet.
Not yet? All right. By the way, while we're doing that, a dear old friend of mine who was a disc jockey just passed away. Wonderful, wonderful young man. His name was George Piccoli. And George, if your family is listening, I know there's sadness and we grieve that he's not with us. But the memory of the wonderful things that he did as a disc jockey locally here and the things that he did for everybody, especially in Philadelphia, will always be remembered. And look, we're all going to be there one time or another. So to George's family, I too will miss him. But we'll all meet again, okay? Now, I'm looking at the screen, and I see a question here. Someone said to me, and this is interesting, how did I become a dancer? And this is from Elaine. Well, I was watching a show called Bandstand, and I think I told you this before. Bandstand, before Dick Clark had it, was a local show. And I've always said that when Dick Clark took the show national, it lost a little bit of the local appeal because it was a national show. Locally, Bandstand was the show. And I snuck in when I was 13 years of age, and you had to be 14, and there was a dance contest going on. And I've told the story before. I won the dance contest. And when you win a dance contest, especially locally in South Philadelphia, I became like a local little star. And I learned how to dance from holding a telephone pole. And when I would hold on to the pole, I would get a rhythm beat. And I would imagine it was be my partner as I would jitterbug. So I had a natural rhythm thing. And I've carried that rhythm from Bandstand to on the road. I was always dancing one place or another. And if I have to thank any of the people who in the early days of my career really championed me on, it was the record guys and the promotion guys and the promotion guys that I worked with, because there was a period of time when I wasn't dancing anymore and I was doing promotion. And the older Jewish guys had all the record distributors. There was, as I said last week, Harold Lipsius, there was Harry Chippetz back then, there was Bernie Lowe back then, and Bernie Lowe had a record company called Cameo Parkway. And they took a liking to me. And these are the ones that said to me, you know, you like show business. And I always did. And my introduction to show business, as I told you before, was Sammy Davis and Don Rickles. And I told you before that I met all the great stars because of Sammy and Don Rickles. I was Rickles' valet, and Sammy and I became, as I said, just soul brothers. If there's any one performer that I really said could do everything, and I think you'll agree with me, it was Sammy Davis. And unfortunately today, many people don't realize, but I understand that they're going to be doing a movie on Sammy about his relationship with Kim Novak, which should be very, very interesting. Sammy had some problems. He was dating at that time Kim Novak, and back in the early 50s, that was a no-no. And supposedly Harry Kahn, who was the head of Columbia Motion Pictures, had a great deal of money invested in Kim Novak, and there's a great story. I'm not going to say anything more than that, but if the movie comes out, I'm sure the movie will cover what the situation was with Sammy and Kim Novak. Question?
Hi, Ian.
Ian,
Wants to know if you ever dealt with Elvis.
did I ever deal with Elvis? Ian, yeah. Let me tell you, great story about Elvis. Fats Domino, as I said, is a dear friend. Fats Domino was always at the Flamingo for all of his life. He played the lounge. So I was invited to do a birthday party. Springsteen asked if I would do a surprise birthday party for Mark Brickman, who was his lighting guy. And it was in California at the old Whiskey A Go-Go, which became the Roxy. So what I did, I flew out and I did the surprise birthday party for Brickman. And Little Richard was on it. Also Ricky Lee Jones. Ricky Lee Jones was on it. I would do a surprise birthday party. And I did it. My voice is just coming back, so don't get upset. So at any rate, from LA, I decided to stop in Vegas. So when I stopped in Vegas, I went to see Fats, who was at the Flamingo Lounge. After the show, when Fats gets done doing a show, everybody in the lounge, they do when the Saints come marching in. And when the Saints come marching in, and they go all around the lounge. And then Fats plays the piano, and everybody goes around, and Fats gets off the piano, and he's sweating, and they all go back to the dressing room. When Fats saw me, he said, "Geator, come on back to the dressing room." So I'm at the dressing room. And Fats, he takes his shirt off, and he's got the valets, they're toweling him down. Now, you are where Fats Domino is, and I am here. I am talking with Fats, okay? My back is to the door. All of a sudden, there's a... We're talking. Fats says, "Somebody answer the door, answer the door. They're knocking at the dressing room. See who it is." So I'm still talking, and in comes this guy. I have my back to him. And he goes past me, and it's Elvis Presley. He's dressed all in black. He was in Vegas doing the big special that he did in Las Vegas, you know, the one-on-one where he sat, that was shot in Vegas. I looked at him, I said, "Wow, Elvis Presley, man." And man, listen, I ain't strange, but this cat was good looking, all in black, pitch black hair. So he says to Fats, "Mr. Domino, you know, I love everything that you've done." And I'm looking at this. And Fats says, "Come on, Elvis, listen, I love everything that you've done." Beep, 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 bop, boop. And he says, "By the way, I want you to say hello to my friend, the Geator." So Elvis turns and he says, "Mr. Geator, it's so very nice to meet you." I said, "Elvis, you don't have to call me Mr. Geator." "Oh," he says, "I call everybody Mr." He says, "That's the way I was brought up." I said, "Well, Elvis, I got to tell you, God bless you for what you've done." And as you know, I guess the passing of Elvis was in August, wasn't it? Right? The passing of us? Yes, it was in August.
Franklin died on the same day.
Aretha Franklin.
And Elvis died on the same day.
Right. Now, I tell you, Aretha, here's a great story about Aretha. She would come into town, and you know, her friends would now call her Aretha. It was Ree. "Hey, Ree. Hey, how you doing?" "I'm doing good." So she'd come in town, and she did not want to fly. She didn't like flying. She would take a bus from whatever town to town. So she came in town to do a show years ago at the Man, years ago. But every time she was in town, she would call me up, And she said, I'm standing at the Franklin Motor Court. I want you to get me the ribs and the chicken because we're going to be leaving and I want to have it on the bus. So I said, no problem. She had 2 buses, the band guys and her people. And I would call Lawnside Ribs, not Lawnside in New Jersey. There was a place on South Street. It became Ron's Ribs. And I would get her the ribs. And I would get her the collard greens. And I would get her the chicken man. And I would get all that. And I'd have to have a guy with a van pick all this stuff and get it to Aretha. And man, on the bus, they were having a picnic. But there are many stories about Aretha that I could share. Another story was, and this is an interesting story. She was at Madison Square Garden, and I had to do a tape interview for my TV show, which, by the way, are all now on videos. All of these great stars from my TV show, Jerry Lee Lewis, Chuck Berry, Frankie Valli, we all have the videos, by the way, and maybe next week we'll try and figure out how you can get these videos. But so I go to Madison Square Garden, and Aretha, something you people may not know, even with Sammy Davis, in the room, you had to turn the air conditioning off because it affected their throat. Even in the hotel room where they stayed, no air conditioning. Now, she's at Madison Square Garden. I go first to the hotel, and she says, we can't do it here. I've got to go to Madison Square Garden. It is when they nominated in New York City Bill Clinton to be the nominee to run for the President of the United States. This is how long it is. So we go to the dressing room, and she says to the guard, you must turn the air conditioning off. The guard says, oh, Miss Franklin, I don't know how to do it. Well, you tell whomever that if it's not turned off, I am not going on that podium and introduce Bill Clinton. 10 minutes later, the air conditioning is off. Now, she says to me, I'm all set, like the camera's here. She says, no, hold on now, Geator. We'll do this interview when I come back. This was 8 o'clock at night. She did not come back until after midnight because she stayed in that convention until after midnight. When she came back in, there's no air conditioning in the room. I'm sweating. She comes back, and you'll see this in the video. She says, Geator, are you ready for the interview? I said, yeah, I'm ready for the interview. But there were so many great stories about some of these wonderful stars. You know, my buddies, as I said, because we're all from South Philly, Rydell and Chubby Checker and Fabian and Avalon, we share something. Even Stewie Stone can tell you this, even the comedians. We are a family of show business. And I've said this to you before, whether you realize it or not, as difficult as these times are for all of you out there, for performers, it is double because we live for an audience. We grow old together as performing. And without the love that you give us when we're on stage, it's really difficult to maintain. And I talked to Frankie Valli. I said, Frankie, what are you doing? I'm making macaroni. I say to Avalon, Frank, what are you doing? Nah, I'm golfing. But we're going to get by this. We're going to get by this. But the most important thing is, remember this, you're the audience that has given all of us a career. And without you people, there would be none of us guys. I mean, you know, look at it, all of the years that this music, and here's another thing about music. I've said it all the time. Music speaks for the human experience. Music speaks when we couldn't express ourselves. It was the music that you heard on the radio that you would call your girlfriend up or you would call your friend up. Hey, man, I remember doing that song, Blue Moon, bop-a-da-beep-a-da-bop. Remember when Elaine was dancing with me at Wagner's or Shebu? That's what music's about. And I think for young people today, we got to get music that has substance, music that tells a story, music that talks about life and love. The great songs will never, ever die. And you know, it's also interesting, whether you realize it or not, Cole Porter, Rodgers and Hart, these great songwriters from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, our artists would re-record them again. Where or When, Dion and the Belmonts, Rodgers and Hart. In the Still of the Night, the Flamingos version, Cole Porter, Blue Moon by the Marcells, Rodgers and Hart. So music will always come back. Music is so important today to keep people together. Remember that. Questions here?
Some shout outs.
Shout outs.
Mark Giuliano and his family want to say thank you from Tony, Marco, and Dawn.
Wait, hold it. Mark Giuliano, I love you. Let me tell you about this young man. Mark Giuliano is very successful in the casino industry. I worked with his dad at a place called the Townhouse, okay? I was, 19, 20 years of age, and I knew Danny was his dad. Tremendous man. I mean, an old-time, really guy who owned a club. Yeah, see? This is the way it's going to be. You're on at 8 o'clock, you're late, I'm going to dock you. So he was just terrific, and he had a wonderful family, Mark and his brother. Mark Giuliano went from that liquor business and became a captain at Resorts International, worked as a waiter with so many great guys. And when I would be with Sinatra, Mark would be the guy. I would be with Julie and Frank. And there's a great story, Mark, which I think you might remember, with Burt Lancaster. I'll tell you that, but I want to just acknowledge Mark Giuliano. He went from that to becoming the head of Caesars, the head of the Sands, and now he's working at the head of that wonderful new casino in the Bahamas. And his wife, Jackie, and the kids, wonderful. He came to see me at Memories in Margate. But a great story now, Mark, which you'll remember. When Frank would get done doing the show, and Frank would always have a tuxedo.
Frank who?
Sinatra.
Okay.
Okay, when Sinatra would get done doing a show, we would all go, after we would eat, up to a place called the Green Room, which, Mark, you remember, was on the second floor. Now, at 3 o'clock in the morning, it was very, very private and was only open for Sinatra and his guests. Julie, I never forget, Sophia Loren was there. I think you remember that, Mark. Great place. Now, I closed Memories in Margate at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I get a call from Julie. He says, "Where you at? The old man wants to see you." Now, my mother used to cook, and Mark remembers that, for Frank and for Sammy, whoever was in town, okay? So I said, "I'm closing the club." He said, "Well, get over here. The old man wants to see you." So I go to the Green Room, which is the second floor at Resorts. Now, at 4 o'clock in the morning, there's not too much action, okay? Go upstairs, and there's Frank, and there's Jilly, and there's a guy with white hair like my white hair. Frank's got the tuxedo on. This other guy's dressed like he's a cowboy, white hair. And I bring a guy, a friend of mine, by the name of Phil Rendon, great guy. He was the head of the unions, Teamsters, but he worked for me as a bouncer.
Was he a friend of yours?
He was a friend of mine. I've got a lot of friends.
Was he a friend of ours?
He's a friend of ours, friend of mine. So me and Phil, we sit, and the room is dimly lit. So I go over, Mr. S, my man, he goes, "Okay, my man, Geator, do Burt Lancaster." Because I used to do Burt Lancaster, and I once did it for Al Martino. So I say, "Repent, repent, repent, you sinners. It's just a matter of time. The Lord is going to have brimstone and fire coming your way. Repent." The guy with the white hair gets up and he says, "Do Kurt Douglas." So I say, "Yes, Kurt." Oh, I didn't know that. And I look at this guy. I said, "Holy shit." It was Burt Lancaster. Sinatra set me up. He set me up. Burt was in town, and Mark can tell you, for doing the movie Atlantic City, if you might remember. And I believe it was Susan Sarandon was in that movie. But there are so many great stories about these wonderful people. And Mark, it was a pleasure seeing you at Memories of Margate. Another guy that is a dear friend of mine, and all these guys grew up in the casino business. Phil Giuliano, I love Phil. Phil was one of the kids that went to my dances. In 1962, I had little Stevie Wonder. Berry Gordy calls me up. Now remember, I'm at the peak of my career. I'm doing 2,000 kids, dances. He says, I got a kid, I'm gonna send a demo. It's called, it's a jazz thing. The Jazz Genius of Jazz, little Stevie Wonder. He sends it to me, song's called Fingertips. I said, I love it. I started to play it. He says, he's gonna be a part of the early Motown review. He's 13 years of age, gonna be 14 years of age. He's going to be in Atlantic City at the Coliseum, Arctic Avenue. The Coliseum was like almost the Uptown Theater. There were certain theaters that played all the black acts, okay? The Latin played all of the major acts, but there were certain, it was called the Sepia Circuit. So I said, fine, bring him in. Jefferson Hotel, 1962. Phil Giuliano's a kid, right by the stage, looking at me as I'm doing all this. And Berry never told me that Stevie was blind. I never knew he was blind. So I'm up there, beeping up, ladies and gentlemen, young teenagers gather around, hark to the sound the Geator's gonna put down. I gotta introduce you, the man, a little guy that's got the #1 song of the country. His name is Little Stevie Wonder. Now, he comes out with a guy, and he's got sunglasses on. Two guys, and I figure it's a part of the act. And he starts to play the horn. Everybody say, yeah. This guy, Phil Giuliano, is pulling my pants. And I'm trying to be, Stevie, Stevie. And you say, he's blind. He's blind. I said, no, leave me alone. He's blind. Then I realized, thank you, Phil, for telling me that little Steve's the true story, was blind. I never knew that Stevie was blind because they never told me. That's Phil Giuliano. He is now in the casino business. Tony Rodeo is in the casino business. My buddy, Greg, is in the casino business. I mean, Gary DeBart. These are all people that grew up. Larry Mullen, okay, who grew up in Philadelphia, was a great player, went to O'Hara. These are the people, believe it or not, that when I first began were kids and are now very successful. So for all of you guys, it's good that you're still doing what you're doing. Amazing, amazing.
Ready for another question?
Another question, yes.
All right. Dante Paul wants to know, who was your most favorite, most memorable interview? Most memorable.
Oh, okay. This guy, Dante and Paul?
Dante Paul.
Okay. The most memorable interview, and I've had great interviews, was with Jerry Lee Lewis. Now, by the way, these are all on videos. I did a show called On the Air with the Geator. Now, Jerry Lee, you know, he had a lot of problems early on. He was a major star, but he wound up marrying his cousin, Myra. And his career came to an end. He couldn't get play because at that time, not only was it the cousin, but she was 13 years of age. So Dick Clark, when he finally came back and his career started to rise, when he was able to get rid of all of the bad press, Dick Clark books him at the Steel Pier. Jerry Lee Lewis did not like Dick Clark because Dick Clark would not play his records when he was persona non grata. So Dick says to me, look, he's at Steel Pier, we booked him. I can't introduce him. He says, well, you go out and you introduce him. I said, my man, whatever you want. Crowd, and he's pumping. Pumping. Okay, he went out by himself, he's pumping. And I'm supposed to go out and say, ladies and gentlemen, the thriller, the killer, Jerry Lee. But this cat's pumping. And it got me. And I wind up, did the same thing with Little Richard, jumping on his piano and doing a slap as he's doing Great Balls of Fire. We became friends. Later on in my career, I'm talking about in the 80s now, early 90s, I do the interview with him. He remembers that. But he says he kicks off the interview by doing this. Geator, you're my man. I remember when you were dancing on my piano. He said, now before we do this interview, I want you to do me a favor. I said, Jerry, whatever you need. I want you to get my money. I said, what do you mean, get your money? He says, Sam Phillips and Dewey Phillips owe me $2.5 million, and I want you to go get my money. I said, what the hell am I going to go get his money? I said, Jerry, let me ask you a question. Now, we're filming this. I said, Jerry, how do you let a guy like that get into you for $2 million? What about? He goes, well, that's a very good question. He says, you know, I guess I just ain't that smart, am I? He said, but Jerry Lee is saying to you, Sam Phillips and Dewey, give me my money. And then he says, what do you want to talk about now? I said, well, let's talk about your career. First song you did was Drinking Wine, Spody Odie, right? Not the one by Sticks McGee. This goes back to 40-something. He says, yeah, he said, I began doing that. And he said, you know, I also worked with Elvis, and I also worked with Carl Parkins. And I said, I knew that. He said, I worked with Johnny Cash. We all recorded. He said, you know, we all did road shows together. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we go out on the road. We do these one-nighters. And he said, you know, we'd be popping these little pills. I said, what do you be popping pills? Well, because, you know, we'd be going from town to town. He said they were called Bennies. Now, he's saying this. I had to edit all this out, by the way. Now, I get to the point where I say to him, your career is really cooking. You go to England. He says, England? He jumps out of the seat. Now you really got a sore part on my, you really hitting me now, Geator. I said, well, what are you talking about? What happened in England? England? I'm making him on. He said, I almost lost my career. He said, I married my cousin. He said, I took him to England with me. He said, it was no big thing. We got off the plane and we were waving to everybody and I introduced her. And next thing I know, they were booing me. He said, I couldn't get my records played. He said, but you brought me back to Steel Pier. I wasn't going to tell him it was Dick Clark that brought it back to Steel Pier. So we do the interview, and then he starts to cry. Starts to cry about the fact that one of his children, if you might remember, was drowned in his pool. And a good friend of mine, by the way, Andy Paley, who I hope you're watching, Andy. Andy produced a great album for Jerry Lee Lewis on the comeback when I did the interview. And he broke up, and I got him back on track. And I said, how would you describe your career? And I never forget the movie called Middle Age Crazy, okay, with Bruce Dern, okay, and Anne Margaret. The storyline was a guy who's very, very successful, okay, and all of a sudden he turns a certain age and he wants to get rid of his suit, he wants to get rid of the car, he wants to buy a Mercedes, he wants to have cowboy boots on instead of regular shoes. It was called Middle Age Crazy. And I knew exactly what I was doing. I said, you did a song. I did it early on. I said, you did a song, which I love, Middle Age Crazy. He said, yeah. So at the end of the interview, he remembered it. This was an hour interview, like what I'm doing now. I said, how would you describe your career to all of the wonderful people that are watching? He said, you know, I guess I'm middle-aged crazy, still trying to prove that I can. If you get the record, or if you see the movie, that one recording, which is 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, is the storyline for Middle Age Crazy. Jerry Lee Lewis. Yes?
Give me that.
Yo.
While I go over this,
What's this?
can you break down your rap that you say at the beginning of Heat Wave? And
Heat Wave.
What do you really say, and what does it mean?
This is the Geator with the heater being on the record. A pleader sang, oh wop bop a doo bop, beep bop a doo bop, beep bop. According to the big tick tock on this tower power clock, correct time for the big boss with the hot sauce. It's the Geator with the heater being on the record. A pleader sang, oh wop bop bop a cheap bop.
So what the hell did you just say?
Stewie, will you be an opening act for me, Stewie? I need help.
All right. right, so Mike Miller from Tampa wants to know,
Mike Miller from Tampa.
How-
Great Italian restaurant in Tampa. One of the oldest Italian restaurants are in Tampa. Go ahead.
how do you do 4 radio stations every day?
How do I do 4 radio stations every day? Right here. What I do is I tape the show. I do it for 2 hours. And then we send it out to modernization, what they do today. And that's how you do it. But you know, the secret of my life is that I've always had the freedom to pursue what I felt I wanted to do. I've had the passion. It's about music and bringing people together. I've always been a people person. Whether I was 13 dancing on Bandstand, whether I was hanging on the corner with the guys, whether I was going to the dances with the guys, whether I was a valet, it's about people. I'm a people person. And that's another thing about the pandemic. My grandson Joey and Lindsay and the little baby who's probably watching, you know, he says, I wonder to him, how you doing, Pop? I think he senses that without me bump doing, and I say, hey, I'm doing good, Joe. Desiree, my daughter, all my kids, hey, Dad, you doing good? Yeah. But when you're not around people, you need people. People who need people are the luckiest people in the world. You want to book me, Stewie? A lot of money. Go ahead.
So Terry wants to know, if you were out on the dance floor with all your fans,
If I were out on the dance floor with all my fans,
what is your favorite dance to do, and to what certain song?
you know, I'm almost like a salamander. I could see a dance that you're doing, and I could pick it up, and I could do the step. I may not be doing the exact step that you're doing, like you're doing a line dance, right, bop, bop, and you turn and you move. I can do all of that. It's just a natural rhythm beat. And I use that when I play my records. When I first went on radio, disc jockeys would say, this guy's talking over records. No, they didn't realize that there's an opening, 16 bars, 24 bars. Today, what they do is they have a clock that counts down the beat. No, I knew the rhythm, and I knew when to get out. Dun, 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 ba, 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 dun, boom, bing, chunk, out. Show business. Right, Stewie? You taught me again. Right.
All right, our producer back at the station, our big executive producer.
Our big executive producer.
Yes, wants to know if you could ask the viewers now their comments about the Facebook Live at Memories, what if they are enjoying it, what their
Oh, okay. You know,
the comments, put it in the
there are,
comments.
for you people, there are 2 people here that really make this happen. There's Eddie Tolley and my dear friend David, who we've just met, and the kid started doing all of this when he was 14 years of age. And I hope next week, David, you'll be able to let these people know if they need your services, how to get in touch with you.
So what's the feedback on this, on the Friday nights at Memories? Do they like Mixcloud? Do they like Facebook?
Well, they love, yeah. Let me ask you a question, kids. We're on Mixcloud and we're on Facebook. Which do you like better? I know what you like better. I would say they all love Facebook. Okay. And you know, I had said to Dave, you know, being an entertainer, Facebook has allowed me, by the way, to stay on longer than most other people. You know, we've got that from Warner Brothers and some of the other guys. By the way, I want to say hello to some people out there. Greg Gentili, dear friend of mine, family crushed a Dodge Jeep. These are the people who have kept me alive. You must understand something. I do not get paid for doing radio. I go out and I get the advertisers who pay for the time. I buy the time because that's the only way that I can have the freedom where a program director is not going to tell me what to play. You know, and no disrespect for program directors, but you can't get a guy coming in from Los Angeles or Cincinnati to Philadelphia and he's going to tell you what music you've got to play. Each city has its own type of music. I mean, I play music from my heart, not a research chart. So it gives me the ability, when I have these wonderful advertisers, Primo Hoagies, Chad Violetti, his beautiful wife Susan, and his kids, Lissio's Bread and Rolls, Steve Klasko, Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson. Also, my buddy Ron Donatucci, Will's Eye Hospital. All of these people are important to me. Chicky and Pete's. These are all local people that make it happen. And I am the voice for their product. Mazzo's Market, in Hamilton, Bagliani's. You're talking about Toludo's macaroni. And let me tell you something, Dion. People say to me, what kind of presents do you send during the holidays? Because I'm an old-fashioned guy. I send macaroni, and I send wine. I sent it to Sinatra. I sent it to Rickles. I sent it to Sammy. And the ones that are still alive today, I still send it to Dick Clark's wife, Carrie. She's a wonderful woman. I send it to Connie Francis. So Dion's birthday, I send it to Dion Warwick. Wine and macaroni, the greatest. So I'm talking to Dion. He texts me. It's his birthday in July. My birthday's July 3rd. So I said, your birthday? He said, yeah, you know, Dion, I love me laid back. Yeah. I said, I'm going to send you a present. I call up Toludo's macaroni, only in Philadelphia. I send him out the macaroni. Well, he's been texting me. We had the cavadilles. We had the rigatoni.
Oh, you don't send one kind?
No,
You send a care package.
I send big. I mean, I send it to the Kimmels. People who are my friends. I want to share the stuff that I love. And I must say hello to Alan Rubin and all of the wonderful people from Malt Shop Memories. I'm still working, thank God. At 80 years old, what am I going to do? Retire? No, Stewie, we can't retire. Valley, I love Frank. I talked to Frank. I told you, I'm eating macaroni.
What do you think about, maybe you think Frankie Valli would ever appear on there?
Yeah, let me tell you what we're going to do, okay? I am going to try and do this. I don't have the technology. You guys are going to have to do it. But I'm going to reach out for my friends. And I'm going to have them with me, I guess, Zoom, as we do the show. As we do the weeks on, I'll call Avalon, I'll call Rydell, you know, I'll call all the guys, Frankie Valli.
Ask the viewers who they'd like to see come on the show.
Okay, who would you like to see? Now, look, Burt Bacharach's a dear friend of mine. Smokey's a dear friend of mine. All of the artists that I have with Alan Rubin when I host, along with Jason, all of the artists that are on the show at 2 o'clock, tell us who you would like me to get on the phone. Because I pick up the phone, my man, be ready, we're going to put you on Zoom. I don't know how to do it, but I need Heckle and Jekyll, my two pals over here, to make sure that it works. So let me know who you would like, okay? By the way, Joey, how's the baby? You got to see this little grandson. I mean, little Joseph Downey Jr. I've got great grandkids. I mean, they're big, but this is the newest little guy. He's getting bigger than me, ladies and gentlemen. But for all my grandkids and my great-grandkids, I mean, you guys are the joy. You really are. And Joey, this little guy now has a little baby that big. So just let me know who you would like me to interview. Yes.
So this has been asked for several weeks now, and I don't think we got to it. People really want to know, what's your favorite restaurant in Philadelphia? It might be hard to do. Because
let me tell you, it's what's my favorite restaurant in Philadelphia?
You could do more than one.
But there are many. There's Radicchio's, there's Ambrosio, there's Aldo Lamberti, there's the Saloon. Let me tell you about restaurants, and I want you to remember this. Each restaurant has a certain dish which you crave for, that they make it better than another restaurant. So I go to the restaurants if I want filette de burundol, okay? Or if I want the scungili salad, or if I want aioli with the anchovies. Anchovies are very important for you. I try to eat right, okay? I get up in the morning, out on the range, just like the devil for the pay. How's that, Stewie? But I get up in the morning, I do my exercises for the stomach, I ride my bicycle, I get a tazza cafe, a little coffee, and then I go to the gym. I work out for about an hour. The gym has saved me now, ladies and gentlemen, because all I was doing was set ups and push-ups. Now I'm doing the real deal. So every restaurant has a certain dish that you like. My favorite restaurants were in New York when I was a kid. I used to, because the New York Mulberry Street and the Village, they were from Naples, Napolitani, Abruzzese, and in my opinion, see, my mother was Abruzzese and Napolitan, and they will tell you, Italians will tell you that the best, and I'm just telling you what they tell me and what I think. Abruzzese and the Napolitan, boy, they cook. They really cook. They cook. So,
Okay, the executive producer, a reminder again.
executive producer, reminding me
Don't
again.
Make it happen again.
Is that Keeley?
Make sure that we mention the Margate T-shirts.
Yeah, let me tell you what we've done. I've been in Margate for 48 years. We bought it when it was the Elbow Room in 1972. Many of you remember that one. I worked there as a performer, and then I bought it in 72. And every year we have these wonderful T-shirts. So Lindsay and Joey, who run the club, decided to make a T-shirt for the summer that was never here. And it's an amazing T-shirt because in the back it's got a picture of all of the years that I have been at Memories and all of the different looks other than the look I have now. And you can get that. I guess it's on the screen. Can you do that? That's how you can get it. You can get that. It's on the screen how you can get that. So, yeah.
All right, so you could decide which one of these two questions you want to take.
Two questions. Go ahead.
It's either about meeting or talking to Michael Jackson or meeting and talking to Tom Jones. Tom Jones is still performing.
Yes, yes. Talking about Tom Jones, I got to tell you how I met, first of all, Michael Jackson and the Jacksons. It's because of my little daughter, Stacy.
She's listening, by the way.
Hey, Stace, I love you. Stacy loved Michael Jackson. So he was singing with the Jacksons. And Stacy, I'm sure you remember that. I was invited to a press conference, okay? And my dear friend was Jocko Henderson. Okay, and great disc jockey. If anyone would say to me about disc jockeys, where I picked up that were mentors, it had to be Jocko. Jocko had a rap, and his rap came from a disc jockey out of Baltimore called Hot Rod. Hot Rod was the original ace from outer space. Jocko then took that to another level, and with E to the Ock, this is the jock, and I'm back on the scene with the record machine. So with that rhythm, I would create. This is the Geator, the big boss with the hot sauce, the man with the plan, got to rock the big tick-tock on the tower power clock. And my delivery, unlike Jocko, came from me watching a priest, Father Nelson, when I would go to 12:15 Mass in South Philly. This priest was a little priest, and he would get up in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and he would do, but then he would lower the mic, and after the gospel, 3 minutes would preach on that. And he'd take that mic, and he'd talk. Lord said this, and you shall to blame. Well, I was mesmerized. So when I went on the air, I would do, and here's a song for all of the girls down there from South Philadelphia, for the kids from 18th and McKean, and then when the music hit, here we go. So that was the style, but it all came from the Black Cats, especially Jocko. And Michael. Jocko brings him in, and I'm invited, and I take my little Geatorettes. I take Desiree, I take Kathy, I take Stacy, I take Jerry, and we all go. And little Stacy is still as cute as she was when she was this big. And she started to cry. Because we not only went to the press party, but we went to the suite that they were staying. So Stacy can cry at a drop of a dime. Desiree, Jerry, Kathy is the scholar. So that's the story of Michael Jackson. Now Tom Jones, great story. I'm doing a TV show on WFIL. I was on 5 days a week. And there's a fellow by the name of Peter DePaul, who is a great builder, a dear friend of mine, who's also involved with one of the casinos here. He was bringing Tom Jones in. The first guy to bring Tom Jones in was Peter DePaul at the Spectrum. Jones was on ABC, which was WFIL, the affiliate, and I was 5 days a week. And his show was called This is Tom Jones. So Peter DePaul said to me, can you help me in promoting this? Because we're bringing him in. He wasn't known. The show was hot. So I spoke to our producer at that time, and I said, you think we can get a video with him talking to me from England on my show, talking about how important it is that the people in Philadelphia are going to see him? And we did that. And when he came into the Spectrum, first appearance, sold out, 2 shows, Tom Jones. And then we went to a cocktail party at a place called the Marco Cocktail Lounge, which was right next to the Savoya movie, which was right next to Linton's, which was at Broad and Castle. Only in South Philadelphia would you remember that. So that's Tom Jones and Michael Jackson. Yes.
Okay. You just have to remind people we're here every Sunday.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I got to remind you, I have no idea how they're doing it. I'm watching you, Stewie. I'm watching you. I'm watching you, Giuliano. You're watching me. I can't see you. But every Sunday we're here from 1 hour. But Memories in Margate, you can see me as I'm on stage spinning my records. So you can see what I actually do. Friday and Saturday, we do it from Friday, 7 hours on my feet. Forget about 80 years old. But I still dance, I still move, I still groove. So we do that. You can see it on Facebook. That's Fridays and Saturdays. But please, if you would, let me know some of the performers that would you like to see that will try and hook it up where we can talk to them. We got Chubby Checker, we got Rydell. I'll get him. And I want to thank Alan Rubin and his wonderful wife, Joe. Love you guys. They put together, that's going to last forever, Malt Shop Memories cruises. And this is for the demographic that we're talking about that grew up with this music, where you see all of the artists, that you see them and you're with them. That's Malt Shop Memories. We're not sailing now, but we will be sailing. And I want to say hello also to my buddy, Live Nations, okay? You want to talk about, they're doing great things with drive-ins at this point, you know. And Commissioner Gordon, I call him. I love him. You're the best, Joe.
Somebody must watch you mix on, because they want to know, how do you beat match without headphones, or do you have pre-recorded sets?
No. I do it by feel. I mean, if you have that's the dancer. As a dancer, I've got the rhythm, so I could hear the beat, and I could make it go. Jeff Gordon, you're the greatest. Live Nations are going to be doing some great things. Jeff Gordon, are you watching? No, but rhythm-wise, how do you say, why is one drummer better than another drummer? Feeling the beat, why was Aretha Franklin amazing playing piano? Because it's that soul, that gospel thing. Let me tell you about Aretha. When Aretha first was under Columbia Records, she couldn't get arrested. There were great sessions. John Hammond, who was the producer, they were producing some great music, but they did not put her in the studio where she would be playing the piano. Okay, they'd be overdubbing. You can't do that. What you hear on Little Richard's records and on Fats Domino and with Lloyd Price, that's the actual musicians, the actual artists who are playing in the studio. So they've got that natural feel, okay? You can't, it's like taking me away from a record. I walk, hello, how are you? But when I hear music, it goes. What else?
Somebody asked about the Boris. I guess they don't know.
The who?
The Boris.
The Boris?
The Boris. Do you still go
the
to
Boris.
the Boris?
Oh no, I used to. The Boris is a building. I go all around town. I ride my bike all around town. But the Boris, I used to go there for coffee, and I used to go there. I tell you something also which is important for you. Dark chocolate. They used to have a wonderful chocolate shop over there, and I would get dark chocolate. Don't eat a lot, but it's good for you. Good for your heart, good for another thing. What else? Listen, how do we do it? Oh, Joe, I'm watching the screen here.
Yeah. So,
Michelle Phillips. Oh, that's who said go to the Boris. Joe Williams, I'm watching the screen.
there you go. You can say thank you.
I could see, yeah. Thank you, guys. Of course, I'm blind, but I'm watching the screen. Let me put my glasses on. Hold on. Can I see them if I put my glasses on?
Yeah.
Even with my glasses on, I can't see them. Hold on. Let me.
Shade.
Here we go. Hello, Tony. I love Tony. Tony and Lou, they're checking in right now. Tony is married to Lou, And he's the only guy that I'll share my wine with, okay? Let's see, okay. Linda Baker, love the Malt Shop memories. Good, thank you. We'll be back hopefully next year. Oh, don't go too far. This is going. Gary, yes, Little Anthony. This young man, Gary, says, Little Anthony, he was great, and he's a dear friend of mine. I'll tell you a story next week about Little Anthony, how I saved his career when he was working at the music fair. Okay, I'll tell you about that. Brian, okay, what did Brian say?
Brian wants to know how to order Memories t-shirts.
How do you order Memories t-shirts? You look at the screen right now, and they'll tell you how to order Memories t. This is, hey, yo, folks, this is amazing. I see you people, just your names are coming up. Tommy O'Donnell. I would love to see you get a show on Sirius XM. Now, let me tell you something. That's another great story. This young man said he would love for me to do a show on Sirius XM. When they first began, and even with my dear friend Stevie Van Zandt, who has his own channel, okay, Underground Radio, right? They came to me and they said, we would like you to do a show. I said, great. They said, but you can't play the music that you want to play. I said, what do you want me to play?
Playing all songs shuffled.
Somebody's calling you?
Siri.
Siri?
Siri heard you say, play some music.
Play some music.
It's okay.
Okay. Anyway, so they said, yeah, we want you, but you got to play the list in the library. I said, okay, let me see what the library list is. They had 6 songs by Chuck Berry. They had 6 songs by Fats Domino. I said, wait a second. I played 20 songs. Okay. Almost Grown, Little Queenie by Chuck Berry, Bye Bye Johnny by Chuck Berry, stuff that my audience loves that I introduced. Fats Domino, La La La, The Other Side of Ain't That a Shame. I played B-sides. They said, no, you have to go by the format. Well, I'm not a format guy. So that's why, and even Stevie Van said to me, Stevie said, man, you'll be great. I want you to be the morning disc jockey for the Underground Garage, okay? Because you can talk about the new music and you know the rhythm of the new and combine it with the old underground stuff. I said, okay, Steve, I love the idea and we'll do it. And he said, but you know, you got to go by the library, the songs that they play. They'll allow you maybe 2 songs you can throw in there. I said, Steve, I don't feel comfortable. Listen, if I don't feel comfortable doing something, I don't want to do it, man. I have to be honest with myself. I have to, that's it. That's why I call myself a rebel jock. I'm the rebel jock that rocks the big tick-tock on the tower power clock. Because all the other guys would say, this guy's really, he really is a rebel. Well, with my music and my career, by the grace of God, I created the persona. You people, by the grace of God, accepted that and made me successful for me being who I am. I don't want to follow. I learn by looking. I learn by seeing. I learn by feeling what people like, which they don't like. And that's the secret of what I do. We talk about Stewie Stone and comedians. Well, they have a set act when they get on stage. But they change that depending upon the audience. Sammy would do that. There would be a book. Okay, Murph. Okay, George Rhodes, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a 90-minute set. Here's what we're going to do. But all of a sudden, in the middle of the show, if Sammy saw the audience reaction to Mr. Bojangles, then he would say, skip the next one. Let's continue with Bojangles. And then he would get up and play drums. And, you know, so that's show business. And I'm a product of that. You do what you got to do to make an audience happy. Why am I doing what I'm doing at Memories of Margate? There's a sign that says, I hear you knocking, but you can't come in. Why am I up there on stage with my records, with nobody inside? Certainly you can be in the garden and get a little drinky-winky outside the garden. I'm doing it to keep it alive, to keep music alive up and down the Jersey coast. Because without that music for the summertime, as bad as it is, it would be worse than it is. Am I making money? No. Am I losing money? Yeah. But it's not about money. It's about people doing the right thing. And that's why I do what I do, you know.
right.
But more important, please let me know the people that you would like me to talk to. I see Janice Greco because, well, thank you, Janice Greco. I see Tommy O'Hara. I see these names are popping up and I'm blind. This is a wonderful thing.
Ron Hunter's here.
Ron Hunter. You know, there was a great movie producer called Ross Hunter, you know, who did the Doris Day movies later on, you know.
We'll talk about Doris Day next week.
Doris Day. She loved dogs, loved animals. You know, also loved Kim Novak. Kim Novak is still alive today.
Really?
Yeah.
So, can they hear me?
Yeah, he can hear me. I can hear you.
So, we'll be back next week.
Hopefully, if the guy upstairs says you got another shot.
If anyone's did not get their question answered.
Okay.
or
If
someone-
any of you, hold on. I got it. If
Yeah.
any of you didn't get the questions answered that you were asking me, we'll get a list.
Yeah.
And we'll open up the show.
So people, even if they're watching during the week,
Even
leave
if,
a comment,
wait, they could see this during the week?
they'll see this for the rest of their lives. They can go back and watch it. We had 25,000 viewers over last week's show.
25,000 people.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Stewie Stone show.
So remind them to leave
By the way, I have to say hello to Marilyn. Marilyn Stowe. I love Marilyn Stowe. That's Keely's mom. And Angela and Catherine and Larry Mullen. Larry Mullen is another one of the guys, as I said earlier. He's got Melissa, beautiful wife, and great kids. He's got little Leo, named after Leo DiCaprio. And of course, he's got Lawrence, named after Laurence Olivier. And of course, I'll give you the one who played Scarlett O'Hara. Vivian Lee. So it's a little Scarlett. He's got those wonderful kids, all movie stars. So Lar, my man. Hey, hello, Jim Allen. I didn't forget you. It's just that I'm lost without working. Seminole Hard Rock, good guy.
So, yeah.
I gotta go. Goodbye.